In this video, we are going to be going through the fractions review for my class. So if you're not in the class, you can go through and watch me work some fraction, multiplication, and division problems. But if you're in my class, I hope you have your review beside you and you are going through and checking your answers as you go through this. If you only need to check a few answers, feel free to skip through the video to the questions that you need help on. Okay, let's look at part A. The directions say, compare the following fractions using the less than, greater than, or equal to sign. Justify your answer. So on number 1, we have 8/10 versus 3/8. Well, I know that 8/10 is very close to a whole. So that is close to one whole, where 3/8 is less than a half, because half of 8 is 4. So I know that 8/10 has to be greater without making common denominators. But if you feel like making common denominators, you can. Okay, for the next one, we have 4/5 versus 7/15. Well, 4/5 is pretty close to 1. It's only 1 away. And 7/15 is close to half. So I know that 4/5 is greater than 7/15. If you want to make common denominators to check your answers, feel free. So I could say change 4/5 to a 15th, which would be 5 times 3. So 4 times 3 would give me 12/15. So you can see that 12/15 is greater than 7/15. Next, we have 2/5 and 13/15. The 13/15 is close to 1, where 2/5 is close to a half, so 13/15 is greater. This one you can also check. Change the 2/5 to a 15th, so that's times 3 as well, so 6/15 is less than 13/15. Now on to part B. We are rewriting mixed numbers to improper and improper to mixed numbers. So remember, to make a mixed number improper, we multiply by the denominator, so 3 times 8. So 3 times 8, which gives me 24. And then we are going to add the 5, which gives me 29. And we keep the denominator same. So the answer for this one is 29/8. Next, we are making a improper a mix. So you're going to do the opposite. So we multiplied in the mixed number, so we're going to divide. So we have to think, how many times will 6 go into 35? It'll go in there 5 times. That gives me 30. We have 5 left over. So this will be a whole 5 with 5/6 left over. Okay, now on to C and D. Still have another improper, so once again, we are dividing when they are improper. So 5 will go into 47 9 times. 9 times 5 is 45. Subtract, I have 2 left over. So this answer is 9 whole times with 2/5 left over. And the next one is 4 1/7. So we multiply the whole by the denominator, which gives me 28. We add the numerator, which gives me 29. So we have 29/7 as the answer. Part C, we are writing the following groups from least to greatest. Make sure that when you are taking your test, you are looking to see if it says least to greatest or greatest to least. So I'm going to do this based on what are they close to first. And then if I have any that I'm having to check out, I might make common denominators. So 2/9 is close to 0. 5/8 is close to a half. 8/10 is close to 1. And 6/12 is exactly a half. So I know 2/9 has to go first because it's the closest to 0. And then I have 5/8 and 6/12, which are both close to a half. But if I think about 5/8, that's more than a half because 4/8 would be a half. So 6/12 would need to come next. And then you have your 5/8. And then finally your 8/10 because it is the closest to a whole. Remember, you can use a number line to do these problems as well. Okay, we are on to B. We are also writing these from least to greatest. So first thing, once again, look for those numbers that you know. So this is 1 6/7. So this is really close to 2. 3/10 is close to 0. 1 5/9 is close to 1 1/2. 7/3 is an improper fraction, so we need to change that to a mixed number. So 3 will go into 7 2 times, and I will be left over with 1/3. And then 11/20 is close to a half. So my 0 is my smallest, so the 3/10 would come first. And then the half, which is 11/20. Next, I would have the 1 5/9 because that is close to 1 1/2. Then I would have the 1 6/7 because that was close to 2. And then 2 1/3, the 7/3 was 2 1/3, so it was the biggest number. So remember, if you have an improper, you need to change it to a mixed number before you start ordering them. Next, we are calculating each product, and I need you to simplify your answers and do not leave them as improper fraction. This should say as an improper fraction. Nobody has corrected me this week. I'm surprised. Okay, so we multiply by fractions by multiplying the numerator by the numerator, which gives me 6. And the denominator by the denominator, which gives me 35. So 6 and 35 does not have a factor the same, so this is a simplest form it can be. Okay, now we have 3/4 times 9/15. Same thing, we're going to multiply the numerator, which is 27, and denominator, which is 60. So then we can simplify these because they have 3 in common. So I'm going to divide by 3 on both of them. This will give me 9/20. And 9/20 is simplest form because 9 and 20 do not have a common factor. Okay, last multiplication one. Remember, we have to change these mixed numbers to make improper fractions. Remember, make whole and mixed improper. So 2 1/7. 2 times 7 is 14, plus that 1 gives me 15. So I have 15/7 times 1/3. Multiply numerator times numerator, which is 15. Denominator times denominator, which is 21. 3 can go into both of these, 21. So divide by 3 again, divide by 3 on both of them, and you'll get 5/7, and both 5 and 7 are prime, so that is in simplest form. On your review, there was not a whole number times a fraction, so I just want to review that real quick. So if I had 7 times, let's say, 2/5, remember to multiply with a mixed number or with a whole number, we still have to make it improper, so it has to be 7/1 times 2/5 because you have to have numerator and numerator. They have to be side by side. That's 14. 5. And then you just simplify, so it'll go in there twice with 4/5 left over. So remember, change mixed and whole to improper. Okay, now division. Division we talked about. We learned that if we multiply by the reciprocal, it's the same thing as dividing by the fraction. So we're going to rewrite this. So copy this down. Dot to change this to multiplication, and we are going to do the reciprocal of 3/18 with this 18/3. You could cross simplify if you wanted to in this problem, but because several students are not, I'm going to go ahead and straight multiply across. So 3 times 18 is 54. 9 times 3 is 27. And then you should be able to see that 27 goes into 54 2 whole times. Okay, even when you are dividing fractions, you have to change mixed numbers into improper. So first things first, let's change the mix into an improper. So 3 times 4 is 12, plus that 3 is 15. So I have 15/4 divided by 5/6. Now we can rewrite this. So 15/4 times 6/5. So 15 times 6 gives me 90. 4 times 5 gives me 20. And I know 20 will go into 90 4 times with 10 20ths left over. And you should be able to see that that simplifies to 4 1/2. Okay, so we have 4/7 divided by 6. So 6 we need to make into improper, so 6 over 1. Now we can rewrite it. 4/7 times 1/6. And so we get 4 40-seconds. And for 40-seconds, we can simplify that by dividing them both by 2. So that is 2 21st, and that is in simplest form. Okay, now we are on to the back of your page, so flip over, look at the word problems. So a gasoline pump delivers 4 2/5 gallons of gas per minute. How many minutes will it take to fill up for 16.5 gallons? So we have to think first, is this a multiplication or a division? So today or yesterday in class, we talked about how we noticed that if these are both gallons, that helps us to decide that we are dividing, because we want to know how many 4 2/5 gallons are in 6.5, because that'll tell us how long it will take. So we have 16.5 divided by the 4 2/5. Both of these are mixed numbers, so we need to make them improper. So 16 times 2 is 32, plus the 1 is 33. So this is 33 halves. Notice I'm keeping it division right now. 4 times 5 is 20, plus the 2 is 22. So I have 22/5. Now you can change this to multiplication. Multiply by the reciprocal. So you will get 165 if you multiply those over 44. And then you may need to go over to the side and do some dividing. So 44 goes into 165 3 times, which gives me 132. And if I subtract that, I have 33 left over. So this becomes a whole 3 with 33/44 left over. And you could simplify this as well, to 3 3/4 minutes. Which, if you go back and think about it, like I've said, when you're doing word problems, 4 2/5 was 1 minute. Per minute means for 1. So think about this. 4 to 16 would be times 4. So is 3 3/4 close to 4? Yes. So my answer makes sense. Always go back and ask yourself that question. Does my answer make sense? Okay. Six Flags Amusement Park has found that 3/5 of its customers ride the Colossus roller coaster. Of these, 1/4 will ride it again. What fraction of the customers ride the roller coaster twice? So you have to think on this one. 3/5. I am trying to decide if I need to multiply or divide by 1/4. Well, we learned that when we were multiplying by a 1/4, it's the same thing as dividing by 4, which will tell us how many there is. So this is multiplying by 1/4. So that would be 3/20. Some people, you might need to stop and think, okay, 3/5 will ride the roller coaster 1 time. So my answer has to be less than 3/5. 3/20 is less than 3/5. Let's say you accidentally divided. Let's work this out. What would happen if we accidentally divided? So I get 3/5, and then I would have to change this to 4 over 1. 12/5, which is 2 2/5. That is greater than the original 3/5. So this does not make sense for my answer. Okay, a piece of plywood is 24 inches wide. It is cut into strips that are 2.5 inches wide. How many strips are in the width of the plywood? So this one, if you visualize, you have, say, a 24-inch thing of plywood, and you're trying to cut it into strips. That's dividing. You're dividing it up. So you're dividing the whole plywood by the 2.5. So once again, we have to make these improper. So 24 over 1 divided by, this will be 4 plus the 1 is 5, 5 halves. And then we can change it to multiplication by multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 48/5, which leaves me with 9, because 9 times 5 is 45, and 3/5. So you could say you could make a total of 9 strips. Because you could have 3/5 of a strip, but you could just say, okay, well, I can only make a whole 9 strips. Okay, last question. Miss Smith bought 3.5 yards of fabric. Okay, 3.5 yards of fabric. She used 2/3 of that fabric. Okay, so first we need to stop and think. Is my answer going to be greater than 3.5 or less than 3.5? It has to be less because she used 2/3 of it. So, need 3.5. We are going to multiply by 2/3 because we learned that if we multiply by a fraction, we are going to get a number that is less than the previous. So this would be, we need to make this improper, so 6, 7 halves, 3 times 2 is 6, plus the 1 is 7, 2/3. This will give me 14, 6, and then 6 will go in there twice with 2 6 left over, or 2 1/3 of fabric, which 2 1/3 is less than the 3.5, so my answer does make sense. Okay, if you have any other questions or things that you want to go back over in class, just write them at the bottom and we will talk about them in class tomorrow. So just remember, you've got this. We have worked on this. Just take your time and always, always go back and ask yourself, does your answer make sense? Okay, your test is on Friday. Have a good night.